and we are super excited to dive into a topic with you today. Today, we are going to talk about wedding budgeting, something surely none of you fabulously new engaged couples have thought about at all. I'm sure it doesn't occupy any of your brains.
If you crave luxury but need guidance, then stay tuned for magic. Welcome to Wedding Tips and Tales with T.S. Wed, the podcast where we unveil the secrets to crafting the perfect luxury wedding. Join us for expert advice and insider tips that will make your special day unforgettable. Let's make your wedding dreams come true together.
Hi, good morning from Bend, Oregon, everyone. My name is Taryn.
And I'm Dani.
And we are the dynamic duo finally together for Wedding Tips and Tales. But we're really excited. But before we start, first,
What are you drinking?
I am drinking, as everybody can see, we look very, very pretty right now. It is because we just got back from the gym, but we felt that this was very authentic. And so I am drinking a chocolate protein drink.
And I'm doing a vanilla chai protein drink. And it's because we woke up at 4:30 this morning.
We did, we're jet lagged.
We're jet lagged. Anyways,
Cheers! Very,
Mine's fine.
it's good. It's like a smoothie.
It is like a
They
smoothie.
smoothied it instead of
Yeah.
like a regular protein powder.
This makes me skinny.
It's not going to make you skinny.
Oh.
I hope it makes you strong.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Diving in. So, weirdly enough, here we are in the middle of 2025 and inquiries are picking up. And that's an unusual time. But obviously, we are in an unusual time in the world right now. And so, for the wedding industry, what we've been seeing, what we traditionally see is that inquiry season happens between about Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day for the coming year. That was not the case for this year. This year, inquiries were really slow during that time because obviously there was a lot going on in our country and in the world that made it maybe a little bit nerve-wracking to think about investing in something like a luxury wedding. And so right now, we're starting to see inquiries come back, which is really exciting. So I've been having some really great phone calls with specifically a couple of incredible women. And we've been talking a lot about budgeting more than we probably would have before this particular season. And so Dani and I thought we'd hop in and talk a little bit about what it looks like when you're in the inquiry process or at the very beginning of your planning process. What does it look like to consider your investment?
Yeah. And I think it's hard because when you're Googling, if you're, a newly engaged couple and you're looking up, what should my budget be? You're going to get information that really ranges
Totally.
all over the board. And we've discussed this before, the difference between a DIY couple, a luxury couple, there's going to be a range. It also really depends on your location.
Right.
I would say the top two things that are really going to dictate your budget, it's going to be location and guest size.
Yes, correct. Yes. And I think too, when you're looking at your budget will also dictate your location and your guest side. So it's it flip-flops, right?
Right.
So the location and guest size dictates your budget, and or your budget can dictate your location and guest size. So for example, we're currently at a venue in Bend, Oregon right now. That is lovely, very lovely. However, it is a little bit less lovely than some of the properties we were originally considering with our wonderful couple that we're working with right now. And they decided that they wanted to invest their money not in the venue specifically. So they have a very healthy budget and they're doing absolutely gorgeous luxury wedding, but they were like, you know what? We don't want to blow all of our money on the location.
On a 5-star.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And so instead we found this really exceptional property that was a more affordable version of what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, your budget can dictate your location selection.
Right.
Right. Because they knew they had X amount of money that they wanted to spend. And they weren't interested in spending 35% of it on the venue.
Right.
Alternatively, if you're this other couple that I spoke with earlier this week, actually, they fell in love with a Four Seasons property in Hawaii. They're absolutely obsessed with it. They think it's amazing. They want to stay there. They want their guests to stay there. And then they told me their hopeful budget. And I said, that is lovely. I've done events at that property. I've stayed at that property. We've done room blocks at that property. There is not a world where the budget you've just relayed to me will work on that property. And it's not that their budget wasn't a healthy budget for a wedding. It was. It's just that the Four Seasons.
I think say the pricing. I think let's be blunt. I
Oh,
say what the
okay.
budget was.
They were looking at between 50 and 90,000 for about 100 people total. That's a healthy budget. That's a good amount of money. Like anybody who's spending that much money on a wedding is going to have a lovely experience, but you're not going to be at the Four Seasons. You're just not.
In Hawaii. You're not, certainly, I think probably most Four Seasons, but certainly not the one in Hawaii.
No, and it's because everything's so much more expensive in Hawaii in general, which of course we've already touched on, but also like by nature of being at a hotel property, you're paying their food and beverage costs, which of course they jack up the price of a beer to like $9 a pop.
Yeah.
And then you're also paying like service charges and things of that nature. And so, I immediately went, great. So you love tropical and this is the budget that you have. This budget is going to go a lot farther and have a lot more impact for you and for your guests if we consider a different property, maybe in Mexico or, somewhere that's not Hawaii.
And it's good to think too, that to your point, like the guest count and location versus budget and that back and forth, you have to decide which one is the priority.
Right.
If your priority is your budget, meaning that this is how much we're spending on our wedding, we do not have the capacity to go over that, then that needs to lead the conversation when you are trying to figure out your guest count and your location. If your budget is flexible, then you can have the location and the guest count lead the conversation. If you say, you know what, we want to be in Hawaii and we have to have at least 100 guests, great, not a problem, but then your budget is going to come secondary. You can't do all three as your top priorities when you're starting out, because you need to decide which one is going to be the guiding star in your decision making, because then that will affect the rest of your budget going down the line.
Right. And I think a lot of people have trouble when they're in the very beginning of the inquiry process figuring out what your budget is, right? So you go, oh, I don't really know. I need to see what things cost and I need to see the line item list of what each proposal is going to be. And in a perfect world, that would be great, but you're not going to get that until you're halfway through the planning process.
Right.
And so what I tell people at the very beginning is, okay, so what's your budget? And they will say, well, we don't really know. We're just going to see where we land. And I'm going to go, great. So is it $1 million? And some people will say, well, yeah, maybe in that range. But most people go, what? Like, okay, great. What number makes you deeply uncomfortable? Like, and then track it down. Track it down. So, okay, it's not $1 million. What about 750,000? It's not 750,000. What about 500,000? And finally, you're going to get to a place like amongst you and your fiance. And then if you have any like parents contributing or things of that nature, you'll get to a number where you go, okay, 400K, that doesn't make me want to puke. Like like, oh, if we could get below that, that's great.
Right.
But 400, it doesn't, like, I can survive if it's the best experience that I've possibly gifted to my family members and friends, then that is your budget. And so that's the number that you go into with, like, when you're starting off with the inquiry process with a planner or a designer or a venue or anybody. Like, you need to have a number in your mind that doesn't make you want to die. Like, that feels like, if I had the best experience ever, and if I was able to gift and host for the best experience ever, this is what I would be willing to spend on that experience. That's your budget.
And keep in mind, right, $400,000, if you have 100 guests, that is an incredibly healthy budget where you're going to have multiple days of events. You're going to have everything that you're going to really want in the location that you want, right? You can also spend $100,000, $80,000. $50,000. It just depends on your location and your guest count and the experience that you're wanting to provide to everybody. If you are set in your head of, I want to have a whole weekend of events, I want a welcome event, I want the wedding, and then I want brunch the next day, and my budget is $60,000, amazing. You need to have like 15 guests.
Yeah. 15 guests at a modest location,
right,
and a lot of DIY stuff.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That there are great planners out there that facilitate those kinds of events, and who would be an amazing connection for you.
I think, and I hope this is helpful for us, we do really truly anywhere from lovely to ultra luxury weddings. Mm-hmm. What would you say? Let's give everyone just the range of photo, video, floral, catering.
For what guest count?
Let's say 100 guests.
For 100 guests.
From from starting the low end is going to be lovely. The high end is going to be ultra luxury. So
Well, ultra luxury can go like up to
sure.
any.
So let's just say
So,
lovely
like,
to luxury.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. But I guess we can also touch on that. So let's do something that's easy, photography.
Yes.
If you are doing wedding day photography, your minimum is going to be 6 hours. It's most likely going to be closer to 8.
Hmm.
I would say the lowest investment there.
For like a good photographer still, like one that we would recommend. Yeah. I think that for a good photographer that we would recommend, well, that's hard because we don't really do a ton
10.
of lovely.
10,000.
Yeah, that's correct. I was
Yes,
gonna say about
10,000 bucks.
10,000. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be 10,000. Up to the luxury, you're looking at in the 30 to 35,000 range, and then the ultra luxury, I've gotten a quote for 60.
Yeah, it was like 65, 70,000, like.
So that's the range you're looking at there.
Which is why it's hard, right? So when you are inquiring with a planner, or a venue or a designer or whoever it is that you're starting with, and you don't necessarily have a budget in your mind. I just had this inquiry that I had last week. They were like, "Oh, well, we're talking to friends to see what they spent, and we're like looking around and doing some research, and so we're not really sure. We don't really have a budget, but we're thinking it's probably going to be around 75K." And so I immediately go, "This is a lovely client. This is not a luxury client. This is somebody who's going to be spending a little bit more than 10% of their budget on photography, which is normal. But I would never offer them or even consider going into the ultra luxury world with them,
Right.
because that would be their entire budget on a photographer."
Right.
Like,
Right. Can't do that.
Can't do that.
Okay, so that's photography. Videography, I would say falls in a similar category, if not a little bit more expensive.
You think so?
I think so.
I disagree.
What do you think?
I think that photography is traditionally a little bit more expensive than videography.
Oh, I don't find that to be the case. I find just because of the nature of videography and because it's not just a visual medium, it's an audio medium as well. So their equipment tends to be bigger and
Mhm.
more, and so they might have a bigger team. I would say it's in that realm.
I think you're right when you're considering the ultra luxury.
Sure.
I think you're wrong when you're considering lovely.
I think it depends on, again, it depends on how many hours you're going to do. Videography, that's the thing too. You can get away with a little bit less videography sometimes because it depends on if you just want to capture the ceremony only or if you want the entire day.
Right.
So with photography, you're not just capturing ceremony only, right? You're doing the whole day. Videography, there is a world in which maybe you do 4 hours or 6 hours and not the 8 realm. But I still think you're sitting somewhere between 8 to 30 again.
I think that's right.
Yeah. If not higher. Ultra luxury again is gonna just creep up as much as you want it to.
Yeah.
So that would be that. Florist.
Again, this is hard because it really depends on the aesthetic and the vision.
Sure.
Generally speaking, for 100 guests, you're certainly not going to be spending any less than $20,000 on flowers.
Right. I mean, you think about this. Your centerpieces are going to be somewhere in the $200 to $400 range per centerpiece.
For a lovely wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100 guests is 10 tables.
At minimum.
Right, at minimum. It's 10 people at each table. So, again, that can go higher. Yeah. Even if you're spending $200, 10 tables, like we're getting up there, right? You're not spending, because I know you talked to somebody who said, "Oh, I was thinking like $400 on flowers." That's DIY.
Yeah.
We went to Costco and we bought some flowers and we threw them in a vase, and that's perfectly fine, but that's not lovely or luxury.
Right.
And then, we've had clients spend 6 figures on flowers in the
Mhm.
luxury range.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say 20,000 is kind of the minimum.
I think that's a minimum.
There's some play there. Maybe you get to 18, but if you want a full floral look, what you're finding on Pinterest, what you're seeing posted.
Well, and especially now, because when you consider the idea of the tariffs and like things are getting more expensive for the designers to bring in, and labor's getting more expensive because they're maybe having to hire new people to work with them.
Right. And again, this is where your location matters too.
Yeah, correct.
Because if you're flying flowers in Hawaii, which we've discussed before, that is going to make your flowers more expensive than if you're getting married somewhere that has access to flower farms.
Right.
And then catering. Catering is so hard.
It's like a per person.
Yeah, that's a
range.
figure per person. What would you say for that?
I would say you're not going to get, and including things like labor fees and stuff like that, you're not going to have a full meal experience for anywhere less than a range of $250 to $500 a person.
Yeah.
right?
I'd agree.
And that's for the starting. That's for like a lovely experience.
I think with everything included, right? You're gonna reach out to a venue and the venue's gonna say, "Oh, our wedding per person is 150."
Yeah.
But you're not including the bar, you're not including the service charge, you're not including the tax. So the reality is it's gonna come closer to that 200 or 250 range. And again, there's wiggle room here. If you're getting married at a private venue where you can bring in your own liquor, that's gonna save you tons of investment there.
Or if you do a hotel buyout, for instance, we just had a great call with an inquiry who has done a buyout at a property that we've serviced multiple times, and they do all of their in-house catering, and restaurants are attached, and the pricing is fixed in their buyout location. So like they're getting their food and beverage no matter what at a fixed price.
Right.
And like that's great because that means you get to really deck out your guests, and it is what it is.
Right. So yeah, so these are all just ranges. And again, right, there's so many variables, but this is why it's hard in the inquiry process when people are like, well, how much is everything going to cost? Like, it depends. It depends on your guest count, it depends on your location, depends on the season, it depends on your choices. Like there's no easy way to, from our side of things, to tell you how much you're going to spend off the bat, but there is a range that we can give you.
And honestly, like the range that anybody gives you, like it's possible that you're going to be well within that range, maybe even like 80% likely that you're going to be well within that range. But we we had a wedding that we did last year. Is it last year?
Yeah, 2024.
Oh,
More than me.
feels like longer. We did a wedding last year where the couple came in and with a very, very healthy budget. It was absolutely deep in the luxury wedding realm. And they had just a beautiful vision and a clear idea. And the vision throughout the planning process, it grew. Like it just they kept this bride especially was a very visual person, and so she would see pictures and images on Instagram and on Pinterest, and she would go, "Oh, but wait, I love this. Like I'm obsessed with this. Can we bring this in, but like tailor it to us?" Which is one of her greatest traits,
Yeah.
I think, is because she never wanted to copy something. She always wanted it to be custom to her, which is really amazing, and to their story and their experience. Their budget doubled. Like their budget doubled during the planning process. And I'm not saying that we added. We didn't. Their vision changed.
Yeah.
And they decided that it was worth the investment to elevate until they were well into the ultra luxury realm. We were into the seven figures for their overarching wedding expense. And so that's something to consider too, right? We similarly had a couple a few years ago who we had to sign NDAs for. You know, they certainly are very, 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 very affluent people, and they could have asked for the moon and the stars, and they could have afforded it. And so we were like ready for that experience, and they came in and said, "We have decided this is our budget, this is our number, this is where we feel comfortable investing in an event." And so we are not going to exceed this number.
And they didn't.
And they didn't. And it was beautiful. It was lovely. Again, very, very much a luxury experience and a luxury wedding. But they didn't want to invest in the ultra luxury experience.
And they have ultra luxury money. They could have done it in a heartbeat.
Anything.
But they chose that was the budget, and that was for them a priority.
Yes.
And so everything else fell within the budget priority, despite them not being necessarily people that need to have a budget. That was what was important to them. And so you just have to decide.
Yes, talk to your fiance and whoever else is contributing. If you have, like we said, like family members or parents or whatever, contributing financially, figure out what is the priority. Like, is the priority, like for our couple last year, the experience that you are hosting and that you're gifting to your family members and friends and to each other? Like, is that the priority? Right. And so you start with a number that you think is right, but like at the end of the day, you're ready to go to get that experience.
Right.
Or is it the comfort of your investment? Like, what are you comfortable investing in, and is that the priority? And then that's going to help really guide your conversations with your planner and with your venue and, you know, all the other people as you move through. And you're going to feel a sense of peace because you know what your priority is, you know where your line is, and you're not kind of fumbling through it.
Yeah. And I would say my other advice too, because it's just like guest count and your budget are so intertwined that, like, if you want to have room in your budget, so even if you have a more, let's call it modest budget, but you don't want to have to like the more modest your budget is, the less choices you're going to have, right?
Right.
Like if you only have X amount to spend on florals, I'm not going to be able to suggest to you 8 different types of florists and 8 different types of flowers and blah. You're going to have to slim those options down to stay within the budget, which is totally fine. If you don't want to feel that kind of constraint during the wedding process, but your budget is what it is, leave that gap in the guest count. So drop that guest count a bit more, and you're going to be able to open up more choices that will fit within your budget if your guest count is a little bit tinier than maybe you were originally anticipating.
Right. No, it's smart.
Um,
I think too, a huge piece, maybe my last piece of advice, because I know we're going a little bit longer than we should, but I would really encourage any engaged couple to, like we said, find your budget, but then don't get caught up with the line items,
oh,
right? Because the fact of the matter is if your budget is $500,000, let's just round numbers, it's $500,000. And then, like we were saying, if flowers come in at 150,000, and you are like, that is insane, that is utter insanity, I'm not spending that, but it gives you every single thing that you want. And the rest of your vendor services fall within your $500,000 budget. If you're at $489,000, but you're stuck on that floral proposal being 150, and you're saying that is stupid. I don't want that, except for that you're getting the wedding.
You're getting everything you want.
Everything you wanted within budget.
In my dream world.
You are your own worst enemy.
Correct.
The thing is, you don't, if you're not a luxury floral designer servicing destination weddings with a team, if you don't have that experience, then that means that you have a lot to learn about what goes into that bottom line. It's not just they're picking up flowers at a flower mart and then putting them into a vase.
Okay.
And I even in my business, like I don't know everything that goes into that. I'm a planner. I could tell you what goes into planning. I could tell you what goes into design and execution.
Right.
But like there is a reason if you're working with a capable, well-experienced team, there's a reason that their things cost what they cost.
Right.
And if their cost is within budget for you,
in my perfect world,
let it go.
In my perfect dream planning world, we would never give clients line item pricing.
I know.
I would just say, what is your overall budget? And I would say, here's everything you're getting for that overall budget. And we would not. And sometimes we will lump some stuff together so that we don't get caught on like these tiny little details.
Caught up on.
Yeah. Caught up?
Caught on. Like we're getting caught doing something bad is what it sounded like. We're very transparent. It's what
I
caught that right.
You know, like if the florist is saying, you know, this bouquet is this much and this bouquet is this much, we might just say the bouquets are this much. And so you're not going through everything to be like, well, I want to spend $5 less on the bridesmaid bouquet. Like that's not where
not
the
helpful
stress
to you.
needs to be played.
It's not helpful to the planner. Like,
Right.
And in fact, drop in the comments. We would love to know. Leave a comment. Would you be open to having a planner not give you line items, but instead just work within the bottom line budget that you have? Because it really does reduce a tremendous amount of stress for our clients when they're not caught up in the line item details of like, I can't believe a bouquet costs $700. That's insane to me. I can go buy a bouquet of flowers at Costco for $25.
Right. Which is correct.
It's
not the same thing.
It's not the same, and your confusion is totally normal and fine, except for that you're then going to be stressing out about something that ultimately doesn't matter if you're within your bottom line budget.
Right. That's the reason. It's because you're stressing out about something that does not matter, right, as long as we're fitting with it. If we're over budget, different story.
Totally.
But if you're coming in within what you were willing to spend, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as we're getting everything we're wanting in the budget that we're wanting, you need to trust the professionals to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So hopefully that provided a little bit of clarity about
It's a very blunt conversation.
I know, very blunt. Hopefully, I mean, it should be. It should be blunt, and it should be had in advance of your starting your planning process.
And transparent. You don't want to be caught halfway through the process being like, wait, how much is like, that is difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. So talk it through with the people that are contributing financially, whether it's you and your fiance or your parents or his parents or whoever it is. Talk it through, decide the priority, if it's experience or if it's price point. Like, and that's hard because people are going to go, well, it's both. Okay, but at some point, you know, what's the pain point? Like, is it $1 million that you're like, nope, it doesn't matter what experience I'm having. If it's $1 million or more, then I'm not having that experience. Great. Figure out that pain number, figure out that priority, and then be open and honest and transparent with your planner.
Right.
And it will be smooth sailing for you. All right. Thanks for joining us, you guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave your questions below for future podcast topics. Subscribe, like, and let us know your favorite tip from this video. Until next time, let's keep making wedding dreams come true together. Bye for now.